The council chamber floated in the darkness of space like a giant crystal. Inside, representatives from 100 different alien species sat in their designated seats. The chamber had been designed to make everyone feel equal, but some species were clearly more respected than others. Humans were still new here, barely 12 years as members, and most of the older races looked at them with suspicion. Ambassador Taeyang sat in the human section, his jaw tight as he listened to the debate. For 3 hours now, the council had been arguing about a simple distress signal. A colony of peaceful Liruan aquatic beings who had never harmed anyone was under attack by Ravager pirates. The message had been clear and desperate. Children were in danger. The pirates were rounding up civilians for slavery, but the council was debating jurisdiction. The Liruan Colony 7 is technically in neutral space, said the Krell overlord, a massive insectoid creature whose voice buzzed through the translators. We cannot simply send our fleets without proper authorization forms. Taeyang felt his fists clench. He had been a general before becoming a diplomat, and everything in his training screamed at him to act. But he had learned to play the political game. He had learned to wait and use careful words. How long does authorization take? Asked a representative from the bird-like Thelian species. Standard protocol requires a minimum of 48 hours for emergency requests, replied the council secretary. A floating blob of luminescent gas. We must verify the authenticity of the distress call, confirm that military intervention is appropriate, and ensure that we have consensus from at least 3 neighboring sectors. 48 hours? Taeyang stood up, unable to contain himself any longer. Those people will be dead or enslaved in 48 hours. The Krell overlord's compound eyes focused on him. Ambassador Taeyang, we understand that humans have a tendency toward immediate action, but civilization requires order. We have protocols for a reason. Protocols. Taeyang said the word like it tasted bitter. Tell me, Overlord, when was the last time your species faced extinction? When was the last time you had to fight just to survive? The chamber grew quiet. Everyone knew Earth's history. Humans had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times before reaching the stars. Wars, plagues, environmental collapse. They had clawed their way up from the edge of extinction with bloody fingernails. That is precisely why we must be cautious with your species, the Overlord replied. You are still young, still violent. You see every problem as something to attack. Another message came through from the Liran colony. This time there was screaming in the background. A voice begged for help. The transmission cut off abruptly. Taeyang looked around the chamber. Some representatives looked uncomfortable. Others seemed unmoved. The Thelian representative suggested they form a committee to investigate the situation. The gas blob secretary agreed that would be wise. Ambassador Taeyang made his decision. He pulled out his personal communication device. The one that connected directly to the human military fleet stationed 3 systems away. The device was technically against council rules, but Taeyang had learned that rules were only enforced when convenient. He typed a message to Commander. Day 1. Liruan Colony 7 under attack. Ravager pirates. Civilian casualties mounting. Council is debating protocols. Children are dying. Do what humans do best. He hit send and put the device away. The debate continued around him. The Krell overlord was now discussing the economic impact of military intervention. Another species worried about setting a precedent. What if every minor colony expected the council to respond to their problems? 10 minutes later, alarms began ringing throughout the council chamber. Emergency alert, the secretary announced. We are detecting unauthorized fleet movements. 6 vessels have broken formation from the human defensive position and are initiating faster-than-light jumps. The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted at each other. Several species demanded an explanation from the human delegation. Taeyang remained seated, calm. Ambassador Taeyang. The Krell overlord's voice boomed. What is the meaning of this? Did you order your military to move without council approval? I didn't order anything, Taeyang replied, which was technically true. He had simply provided information. But I imagine Commander Day 1 heard the same distress signal we did. And unlike us, he decided to do something about it. This is an outrageous violation of Council protocol. A dozen species voiced their agreement with the Overlord. You're right, Taeyang said, standing up again. It is a violation. We should definitely form a committee to investigate it. I suggest we take at least 48 hours to properly document the violation and ensure we follow all proper procedures. The sarcasm in his voice was obvious. The Thelian representative's feathers ruffled in anger. This is exactly why many of us opposed humanity's membership in the Council. You are too aggressive, too quick to violence. Maybe, Taeyang agreed. Or maybe we just remember what it's like to need help and have no one answer. Every species in this chamber evolved past their predatory instincts. You became civilized by forgetting how to be dangerous. We became civilized by remembering why being dangerous matters. Humans are a threat to galactic peace, the Overlord declared. Perhaps, Taeyang said quietly. But we're the only ones who are a threat to the Ravager pirates right now. And that's what matters. The Council Secretary was tracking the human fleet's trajectory. They are heading directly to Lyron Colony 7, estimated arrival time 93 minutes. We must recall them immediately, the Overlord demanded. This unauthorized action cannot be allowed to proceed. Taeyang smiled, and there was something cold in that smile. You can try to recall them. But I should warn you, Commander Day 1 is not very good at following orders when civilians are dying. It's a flaw in our species. We have this strange habit of thinking that saving innocent lives is more important than paperwork. The debate raged on around him, but Taeyang stopped listening. He pulled up the tactical display on his personal screen, watching 6 dots move through space at incredible speed. The Hunter fleet was living up to its name. In 90 minutes, the Council would see what humanity had become. They would witness what happened when an apex predator species learned to hunt not for conquest or glory, but for protection. Taeyang hoped they were ready for that lesson. He had a feeling they weren't. Space twisted and tore as 6 massive warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Lyran system. They were Hunter-class vessels, and they looked nothing like the elegant ships built by the Council races. Where Council ships were smooth and curved with shimmering energy shields, the human warships were angular and dark, covered in armor plates and weapon ports that gave them the appearance of mechanical predators. Commander Day 1 stood on the bridge of the UHSF Crimson Talon, watching the tactical displays light up with information. His ship was feeding data to the other 5 vessels in his fleet, creating a shared picture of the battle space ahead. Telemetry from the Lyran colony is coming through, reported Hana, his tactical officer. She had been a Marine sniper before joining the fleet, and her eyes could read a battlefield faster than most computers. 15 Ravager cruisers in orbit. They've established a complete blockade. Ground forces are active on the surface. Day 1 studied the enemy formation. The Ravagers had positioned themselves well, covering all the standard approach vectors. They were professional pirates, experienced at this kind of operation. They would have weapons charged, shields up, and sensors watching for any rescue attempt. What's the civilian situation? He asked. Hannah's expression darkened. Not good? The Ravagers have rounded up most of the colony's population into central holding areas. Estimate 3,000 Lyran civilians, including about 800 children. The pirates are loading cargo ships. They're moving fast. Time until they finish loading and run? 2 hours. Maybe 3 if we're lucky. Day 1 nodded slowly. Not much time, but enough. It had to be enough. Captain G1's face appeared on the communication screen. She commanded the Shadow Strike, one of the other Hunter ships. Day 1, we're looking at 15 hostile vessels. We have 6. Those aren't great odds. Depends on how you count, Day 1 replied. They have 15 ships. We have 6 hunting packs. One grinned. She understood. The Hunter fleet didn't fight like the Council races, trading long-range fire from safe distances. They were built for a different kind of warfare, the kind that Earth's predators had perfected over millions of years. Get close, strike fast, and never let the prey escape. I'm taking Rapid Dawn and Steel Fang for the frontal approach, Ji-won said. We'll get their attention. Byung-ho, you ready? Day 1 called to his fighter commander. Lieutenant Byung-ho's cocky voice came through from the launch bay. My pilots were ready 10 minutes ago. Just give us the word and we'll show these pirates what human fighter craft can do. Young-soo, how are my engines? Day 1 asked his chief engineer. The pursuit drives are charged and ready, Young-soo replied. The man sounded tired but determined. I can give you maximum acceleration for 20 minutes before we need to cool down. After that, we'll either be victorious or dead, so it won't matter much. Day 1 allowed himself a small smile. His crew knew the stakes. They always did. All ships, this is Day 1. You know the plan. Ji-won's pack draws their attention from the front. Byung-ho's fighters scatter their formation. My pack punches through to the colony surface. Speed is everything. The longer this takes, the more civilians die. Acknowledgements came back from all vessels. One more thing, Day 1 added. We're broadcasting this on open channels. There are council monitoring stations throughout this system. The galaxy is watching us right now. Show them what the Hunter fleet can do. He switched to a wideband transmission that every ship in the system would receive. Ravager vessels. This is Commander Day 1 of the United Human Space Force Hunter Fleet. You are currently engaged in an illegal attack on a civilian population. Release the Laran civilians immediately and surrender your vessels. This is your only warning. There was a pause, then laughter came back over the channel. A harsh, grating voice responded. Humans, we've heard of you. New to the galaxy, still playing hero. This is none of your business. Turn around and go home before you get hurt. Wrong answer, Day 1 said quietly. Then louder, to his crew, all ships, execute attack pattern Hunter 3. Let's teach these pirates why we chose that name. The Crimson Talon's engines flared to life. Around him, 5 other warships began their carefully choreographed dance of death. Gia-1's pack accelerated straight toward the Ravager formation at speeds that would have seemed suicidal to Council observers. The 3 human ships absorbed tremendous fire as enemy weapons opened up, but their heavy armor held. The Ravagers thought they were witnessing a frontal assault, the kind of reckless charge that primitives made when they didn't know better. Then, Byung-ho's fighters appeared. They had been hiding in the system's asteroid belt, using the massive rocks to mask their heat signatures. Now they emerged from 3 different directions, 72 small craft moving in perfect coordination. The fighters were fast and maneuverable, piloted by humans whose reflexes had been honed by centuries of atmospheric combat. They wove through the Ravager defensive fire like they were dancing, targeting sensor arrays and communication nodes with precise weapons fire. The pirate formation began to fragment. Ships that had been working together suddenly couldn't communicate properly. Their sensors showed ghost images and false targets. The neat blockade dissolved into confused clusters of vessels trying to figure out what was happening. That's when Day 1's pack struck, the Crimson Talon. Night Hunter and Voidstalker had been hiding in the shadow of the system's gas giant. A standard tactic that most Council races considered too risky because of the radiation. Human ships were built tougher. They emerged at full acceleration, their pursuit drives pushing them to speeds that the Ravagers couldn't match. Day 1 watched the tactical display as distances closed with terrifying speed. Zoom in, target their command ship. I want one clean shot through their reactor shielding. Gunnery Chief Sumin's fingers danced across her controls. Targeting solution locked. Firing. The Crimson Talon's main railgun spoke once, a magnetic pulse that sent a solid projectile through space at a significant fraction of light speed. The round punched through the Ravager command ship's shields like they weren't there, penetrated the armor, and detonated the reactor. The explosion lit up the battlefield. One down, Sumin reported with professional calm. Acquiring second target. Around them, the battle was turning into a rout. The Ravagers had expected a fight, but not this. Human ships moved like living things, accelerating and turning with impossible precision. Every shot they fired seemed to hit exactly where it would do the most damage. When the pirates tried to flee, they discovered what it meant to face the hunter fleet. Human ships were faster. They ran down the escaping vessels one by one, disabling their engines and weapons with surgical strikes on the colony surface. The Ravager ground forces heard the orbital battle and realized no help was coming. They tried to use the Lyrian civilians as hostages, threatening to kill them unless the human ships backed off. Day One's response was immediate. Deploy the Marines. Full assault configuration. I want every hostile on that surface eliminated within 20 minutes. The Crimson Talon and two sister ships achieved low orbit. Their bellies opened and drop pods fell like rain toward the colony below. 500 armored humans fell through fire toward the colony surface. The drop pods were designed for rapid insertion, with minimal protection and maximum speed. Each one carried a Marine who had trained for exactly this kind of operation. As they descended through the atmosphere, their pods began taking fire from the Ravager positions on the ground. 3 pods were hit and destroyed. The rest kept coming. From orbit, Day One watched the tactical display showing each pod's descent trajectory. The computer had calculated the optimal landing pattern, placing Marines in a perfect perimeter around the civilian holding areas. It was a maneuver that required split-second timing and absolute trust in both the technology and the soldiers. Pods are down, Hannah reported. Marines are engaging. Day One switched his view to the helmet camera of Lieutenant Tayman, who was leading the ground assault. The view showed the lieutenant rolling out of his pod, weapon up, and already firing at Ravager positions. Around him, other Marines were doing the same, their movements practiced and efficient. The Ravagers had been expecting a clumsy rescue attempt, the kind that most Council species would mount. They had positioned themselves behind cover, using the Lyrian civilians as shields. It was a tactic that usually worked because most civilized species would hesitate, would try to negotiate, would be afraid of causing collateral damage they had never faced human Marines before. Lieutenant Tayman's squad moved forward in a coordinated rush. Their armor sensors could distinguish between the heat signatures of Ravagers and Lyrian, between armed combatants and terrified civilians. They used non-lethal stun weapons when possible, precise lethal fire when necessary. Every shot was calculated. Every movement had purpose. A Ravager commander grabbed a Lyrian child and held a weapon to the small creature's head. "Back off or the kid dies," he screamed. Tayman didn't slow down. He raised his rifle and fired once. The round took the Ravager in the shoulder, the impact spinning him away from the child. Before the pirate could recover, another Marine was there, pulling the Lyrian to safety while a third Marine disabled the wounded Ravager with a stun blast. The whole sequence took 4 seconds. Sector 1 clear, Tayman reported. Moving to Sector 2. In orbit, Day One was managing the space battle while monitoring the ground operation. It was a level of multitasking that few species could handle, but human military training had always emphasized the ability to process multiple threats simultaneously. It was a skill developed by ancestors who had to watch for predators while hunting prey while protecting their young. Captain G1. Status report. Day One called. G1's face appeared on screen, and she was grinning despite the scorch marks visible on her ship's hull. We've disabled or destroyed 11 Ravager vessels. 3 are trying to make a run for it. Should we pursue? Negative. Let them run. I want everyone focused on protecting the colony. Understood. Shadow Strike will maintain orbital overwatch. Byung-ho's fighter squadron had finished their initial attack, run, and were now providing close air support for the Marines on the ground. The young lieutenant's voice came through, still cocky despite having lost 2 fighters in the battle. Ground forces, this is air support. We've got eyes on multiple hostile positions. Transmitting coordinates now. The coordination between the ground and air forces was seamless. When Marines encountered heavy resistance, fighters would swoop down to suppress the enemy positions. When civilians were spotted in danger, the closest Marine unit would divert to protect them. Every element of the human military was working together like parts of a single organism. On the Council monitoring stations scattered throughout the system, alien observers were watching in stunned silence. They were witnessing a level of military coordination and efficiency that they had believed impossible. The Hunter fleet wasn't just attacking. They were executing a complex rescue operation while simultaneously fighting a space battle and ground war. One of the monitoring stations transmitted a message to the Council chamber. "You need to see this. The humans are fighting like nothing we've ever documented." Back on the colony surface, the Ravagers were beginning to panic. They had faced Council forces before and had always been able to escape or fight to a standstill. But the humans were different. They moved too fast, shot too accurately, and never hesitated. A group of pirates tried to make a last stand in one of the colony's central buildings. They had barricaded themselves inside with about 50 Lyron hostages. Lieutenant Tayman approached the building carefully, using his helmet sensors to map the interior. "I count 20 hostiles, all armed," he reported. "Hostages are in the center of the building. They're using them as a shield wall. Options?" Day 1 asked from orbit. "We can breach from 4 entry points simultaneously. Use stun grenades to disorient them, then precision fire to eliminate the hostiles. Risk to civilians is moderate. Define moderate. If everything goes perfectly, 0 casualties. If one thing goes wrong, we could lose a dozen civilians." Daewin was quiet for a moment. Every commander faced moments like this, where the choice was between a risky action and no action at all. The Ravagers inside that building would eventually start killing hostages to prove they were serious. Waiting meant certain death for the Lyron. Acting meant possible death. "Execute the breach," Day 1 ordered. "But Tayman, make it perfect." "Understood, sir." 4 Marine teams positioned themselves at different entry points. They synchronized their movements through their helmet communications, counting down together. On 0, all 4 teams breached simultaneously. Flashbang grenades tumbled into the room, detonating with bursts of light and sound designed to overwhelm the senses. In the confusion that followed, the Marines entered with their weapons raised. Their armor's targeting systems had already identified every hostile in the room. Each Marine had been assigned specific targets, based on threat level and position relative to the hostages. The engagement lasted 6 seconds. 20 Ravagers dropped, most of them stunned, a few killed when they tried to fire on the hostages. Not a single Lyron was harmed. "Building secured," Tayman reported. "All hostages are safe." Across the colony, similar scenes were playing out. Every Ravager position was being systematically eliminated. The pirates who tried to fight were overwhelmed. Those who tried to surrender were taken into custody. Those who tried to flee found that the human perimeter was complete and inescapable. 18 minutes. After the first drop pod hit the ground, Lieutenant Tayman made his final report. "Colony is secure. All hostile forces have been neutralized. We have 3,216 rescued Lyrian civilians. 0 civilian casualties. Human casualties are 14 wounded, none critical." In orbit, Captain G1's voice was almost reverent. "Day 1, the Council stations are going crazy. They're transmitting constant updates back to the Council chamber. I don't think they believed what they were seeing." Day 1 allowed himself to relax slightly. His shoulders, which had been tense throughout the battle, finally loosened. "Good, let them watch. Let them see what happens when humans answer a distress call." He opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All Hunter ships, excellent work. Secure the area and begin rendering aid to the civilians. Medical teams, get down there and start treating the wounded. Engineering teams, help the Lyran repair their infrastructure. We're not just here to fight. We're here to help." The responses came back quickly, acknowledgments from every ship and every team. The Hunter fleet was transitioning from combat mode to humanitarian assistance with the same efficiency they had shown in battle. Young Su's voice came through from engineering. "Commander, we're getting requests from the Council monitoring stations. They want to know how we moved so fast, how we coordinated so precisely, how we managed to rescue everyone without casualties. Day one smiled. Tell them the truth. Tell them this is what humans do. The council chamber was in chaos. Representatives from 100 different species were shouting at each other, waving appendages and tentacles in anger or confusion. The massive display screens showed footage from multiple monitoring stations, all documenting the human military operation at Lyrian Colony 7. Ambassador Taeyang sat calmly in the human section, watching the reactions around him. Some species looked terrified. Others seemed impressed. A few appeared calculating, already thinking about what this meant for the balance of power in the galaxy. Order! I demand order. High Chancellor Morton's voice boomed through the chamber. The ancient reptilian creature had lived for 300 years and had seen much in his time, but even he seemed shaken by what they had witnessed. We will address this situation systematically. The Krell overlord was on his feet, his compound eyes fixed on Taeyang. This is an outrage. The humans have demonstrated exactly the kind of aggressive behavior we feared. They deployed a military fleet without authorization, engaged in combat without council approval, and invaded a sovereign system. The system wasn't sovereign, Taeyang replied calmly. It was neutral space, and the Lyrian colony was under attack by pirates. I believe saving civilians from slavery and death is still legal under council law. That is not the point. The Overlord's voice buzzed with anger. You violated protocols. You moved military assets without permission. This cannot be tolerated. A representative from the bird-like Thelian species joined in. The footage we have seen is disturbing. Your military moved with such precision, such efficiency. It was almost mechanical. How many years have you been training for this kind of operation? Since before we had spacecraft, Taeyang answered honestly. Humans have been conducting hostage rescues and military operations for thousands of years. We got good at it because we had to. Earth was not a peaceful place. Several species shifted uncomfortably at that reminder. Earth's history of warfare was well documented and widely considered horrifying by Council standards. The gas blob secretary spoke up. I have compiled the statistics from the operation. The human fleet engaged 15 hostile vessels with only 6 ships of their own. Mission duration was 2 hours and 47 minutes. All hostile forces were neutralized or captured. The Lyrian civilian casualty count was 0. Human casualties were 14 wounded, none fatal. The chamber fell quiet as those numbers sank in, 0 civilian casualties. A representative from the peaceful Moran species spoke up. That's impossible. In military operations, there are always civilian casualties. It's an unfortunate reality of warfare. Not for humans, apparently. Another species muttered. Taeyang stood up and requested permission to present the full after-action report. High Chancellor Morton granted it, though he looked wary. What you witnessed was the Hunter fleet doing exactly what it was designed to do, Taeyang began. He pulled up a holographic display showing the battle from multiple angles. Our ships are built for speed and precision. Our soldiers are trained to distinguish between threats and innocence even in the chaos of combat. Our entire military doctrine is built around 3 principles: respond fast, strike hard, and protect the innocent at all costs. He showed footage of the orbital battle, highlighting how the human ships had coordinated their attack. Captain Ji-won's pack drew the enemy's attention while Lieutenant Byung-ho's fighters disrupted their formation. Commander Daewon's pack then struck at the moment of maximum confusion. The entire sequence was planned to minimize the time the civilians were in danger. Then he showed the ground operation. The council members watched Marine teams moving through hostile territory with practiced efficiency. They saw soldiers making split-second decisions about when to use lethal versus non-lethal force. They saw the hostage rescue from the barricaded building, where 4 teams had moved in perfect synchronization. Every human soldier trains for situations exactly like this, Taeyang explained. We don't see civilians as acceptable losses or collateral damage. We see them as the entire reason we fight. The Krell overlord was not impressed. This only proves what we feared. You are a species that glorifies violence, that trains for war from childhood. You move like predators because you are predators. Before Taeyang could respond, there was a request from outside the chamber. A Lyran representative wanted to address the council. High Chancellor Morton looked surprised but granted permission. Elder Polmara entered the chamber in a specialized water tank that allowed her to participate. The aquatic alien's voice came through a translator, and it trembled with emotion. Honored council members, I am one of the survivors from Colony 7. I speak for all 3,000 Lyran who were rescued. She paused, and when she continued, her voice was stronger. We sent a distress call when the Ravagers attacked. We begged for help. We told you that children were being taken. And we heard your response. You debated. You discussed protocols. You talked about jurisdiction and proper procedures. Several council members looked uncomfortable. The Ravagers began loading us onto their slave ships. They separated children from their parents. They beat those who resisted. And still, we heard you debating. Polomara's tank moved closer to the center of the chamber. Then the humans came. We didn't ask them to help. They were not obligated to save us. But they dropped out of space like avenging angels and they fought for us. Not because of treaties or protocols, but because it was right. She pulled up her own footage recorded from the colony surface. The council members watched human marines moving through hostile fire to shield Lyran civilians with their own bodies. They saw a human soldier take a hit meant for a Lyran child. They saw the careful precision of the hostage rescue. I have heard the arguments about human aggression, Polmara continued. I have heard the fears that they are too violent, too dangerous. Let me tell you what I know. There is a difference between those who use violence to harm and those who use violence to protect. The Ravagers are predators who hunt for cruelty and profit. The humans are protectors who hunt because others cannot. The chamber was completely silent now. You can debate protocols and procedures, the Lyran elder said quietly. You can express concern about human military capability. But while you debate, remember that 3,000 of my people are alive today only because humans decided that saving innocent lives was more important than following rules. She turned her tank to face Ambassador Taeyang. On behalf of every Lyran on Colony 7, I thank humanity for remembering what the Council forgot. Some things are more important than protocol. After Polmara left, Hana appeared via hologram to present the tactical analysis. The Council's military observers had requested a detailed breakdown of human combat capabilities. The question we keep hearing is how humans can move so fast and fight so precisely, Hana began. She pulled up comparative data. The answer is that we never forgot how to be dangerous. Most Council species evolved past their predatory instincts millions of years ago. You designed violence out of your nature. Humans didn't. We just learned to aim it at the right targets. She showed statistics that made several species visibly uncomfortable. Human military interventions have a 94% civilian survival rate. The Council average is 61%. Human soldiers can distinguish between combatants and civilians in 0.2 seconds. The Council average is 8 seconds. We can coordinate ground and space operations simultaneously. Most Council militaries can't. These capabilities exist because Earth was a dangerous place, Hana continued. We evolved as persistence hunters, chasing prey across vast distances. We developed complex language and coordination because we hunted in packs. We learned to make split-second decisions about threats because hesitation meant death. When we reached the stars, we brought those skills with us. High Chancellor Morton spoke for the first time since Polmara's speech. You have skills we bred out of ourselves. We thought they were barbaric, remnants of a violent past best forgotten. Perhaps we were wrong about what we lost when we became civilized. The voting began. The Krell Overlord had demanded that humanity be censured for their unauthorized action. The vote failed spectacularly, with 78% of the Council voting against it. Then something unexpected happened. A new proposal emerged, put forward by Chancellor Morton himself. The Hunter fleet should be officially recognized as the Council's rapid response force for emergency situations. The Council chamber buzzed with conversation as representatives discussed the proposal. High Chancellor Morton had just suggested making the Hunter fleet the official rapid response force for the entire Council. It was an unprecedented move, giving humans a level of military authority that no single species had held in. Council History. Ambassador Taeyang listened to the debates with a neutral expression. But inside he was calculating. This was a pivotal moment. How humanity responded would shape their relationship with the galaxy for generations to come. The Krell, Overlord, was predictably opposed. This is madness. We are proposing to give military authority to the most aggressive species in the Council. What happens when they decide that any situation requires their intervention? What happens when they turn their weapons on us? A representative from the peaceful Moran species offered a different perspective. What happens when the next colony calls for help and we spend 2 days debating while people die? The humans saved 3,000 lives today. 0 casualties. Can any of our own rapid response forces claim such success? That is precisely the problem, argued the Thelian representative. They are too good at violence. It should concern us, not comfort us. Taeyang stood and requested the floor. When granted permission, he spoke calmly and clearly. The Council seems to expect that we will either beg for this honor or reject it out of pride. We will do neither. If you want the Hunter fleet to serve as your rapid response force, there are conditions. The chamber erupted in surprised murmurs. Several species looked offended that humans would dare to make demands. You may present your terms, High Chancellor Morton said. First condition, Taeyang began. The Hunter fleet remains under human command. We answer to human law and human military regulations. We will respond to Council distress calls, but we cannot be ordered to abandon civilians for political considerations. If you send us to save lives, we save lives. That is not negotiable. Some representatives nodded. Others looked troubled. Second condition. Any species that joins a Hunter fleet operation must adopt human rules of engagement. Civilians are always the priority. Surrender is always accepted. Proportional force is mandatory. We will not operate alongside forces that treat innocent lives as acceptable losses. The Krell Overlord stood angrily. You dare to dictate terms to the Council? You presume to tell ancient civilizations how to conduct military operations? Yes, Taeyang replied simply. Because we're better at it than you are. The statistics prove it. If you want our help, you follow our rules. Third condition, he continued before the Overlord could respond. The Council must establish a dedicated emergency channel that bypasses all bureaucracy. Any civilian population in danger can trigger it. The call goes directly to the Hunter fleet, and we launch within 1 hour. No committees. No authorization forms. No debates about jurisdiction. Now even the more sympathetic species looked concerned. A representative from the trading guild spoke up. That is an enormous amount of power to give to one species. What prevents you from abusing it? Nothing, Taeyang answered honestly. Except our own values. You'll have to trust that humans mean what we say when we talk about protecting the innocent. If you can't trust that, then we don't have a deal. The debate raged for hours. Some species argued that humanity's terms were too demanding. Others pointed out that humanity could simply ignore the Council entirely and do whatever they wanted anyway. At least these terms created some structure. Commander Day 1 appeared via hologram, still aboard the Crimson Talon orbiting the Lyrian colony. His presence silenced many of the arguments. This was the man who had just conducted a flawless rescue operation against impossible odds. I want to be clear about something, Day 1 said, his voice carrying the weight of command. We're not asking to rule anything. We're not trying to position ourselves above the Council. We're telling you that we will keep doing exactly what we did at Lyrian Colony 7, with or without your permission. When civilians call for help, we answer. That's not going to change. He looked directly at the Krell Overlord. You can make it official and cooperative. giving yourselves some oversight and input. Or you can keep debating while we operate independently. Your choice. But understand this. The hunter fleet exists because humans decided that someone needs to be the predator that hunts predators. We're not going to stop being that just because it makes you uncomfortable. After Day 1's hologram disappeared, Captain G1 sent a private message to him. Are we making a mistake? Binding ourselves to a council that just spent hours debating while children were in danger? Day 1 was quiet for a moment before responding. Maybe, but someone has to be willing to do the hard things. If not us, who? The council species evolved past their capacity for violence. They can't protect themselves anymore, not really. They need us, even if they don't want to admit it. And we're just going to volunteer to be the galaxy's guard dogs? We're volunteering to be the galaxy's protectors, Day 1 corrected. There's a difference. Guard dogs fight for their masters. We fight for those who can't fight for themselves. Back in the council chamber, young Su had been asked to present an engineer's perspective. He appeared via hologram, looking slightly uncomfortable with all the political attention. I've been asked about the technical aspects of cooperation, he began. Here's what I can tell you. By working with the council, we gain access to technologies that could make rescue operations even more effective. Better sensors mean we find civilians faster. Better medical technology means we save more lives. Better communication systems mean we coordinate better. He pulled up a display showing potential improvements. We're not compromising our principles by working with you. We're giving those principles a bigger reach. Every technology you share with us becomes a tool for saving lives. That seems like a good trade to me. The voting began 3 days after the initial proposal. The measure was officially recognize the United Human Space Force Hunter Fleet as the Council's rapid response force, operating under the terms specified by humanity. The tension in the chamber was overwhelming as votes were tallied. Some species voted yes immediately. Others debated right up until the last moment. The Krell Overlord voted no, as expected, and convinced several allied species to do the same, but the final count was decisive. 67% in favor. High Chancellor Mortan announced the results and then did something unexpected. He requested a private communication with Ambassador Taeyang. When they were alone in a secure channel, the ancient reptilian spoke with unusual honesty. I am 312 years old, Mortan said. I have served the Council for most of that time. I have watched our civilization grow more peaceful, more refined, more civilized. And I have watched us become weaker in ways we didn't recognize. He paused, choosing his words carefully. 2 million years ago, my species were apex predators. We hunted across the volcanic plains of our homeworld. We fought and killed to survive. Then we evolved. We became intelligent, built cities, developed culture. We were proud that we had moved beyond our violent origins. But we lost something, Taeyang observed. Yes, we lost the ability to protect ourselves from those who did not evolve as we did. We created laws and protocols and bureaucracies because we could no longer trust ourselves to make violent decisions quickly. We forgot that sometimes civilization needs guardians who remember how to be dangerous. Mortan's ancient eyes fixed on Taeyang. Humanity reminds us of what we were. That is why some fear you. But it is also why we need you. You are what we might have been if we had kept our teeth while gaining our wisdom. We still have a lot to learn about wisdom, Taeyang said wryly. Perhaps. But you have already learned the most important lesson. Power should be used to protect, not to conquer. That is why I supported this measure despite my reservations. The conversation ended and Taeyang returned to his delegation. He sent a message to Day 1. It's official. The Hunter Fleet is now the Council's rapid response force. Day 1's response came back quickly. Good. We've already received 3 emergency calls through the new channel. A mining colony is under attack by raiders. They need help. How long until you arrive? We're already moving. We'll be there in 4 hours. Taeyang smiled. That was humans for you. Always moving toward the sound of gunfire, toward the cries for help. Toward the places where civilized species feared to go. In the council chamber. Representatives were still discussing what they had agreed to. Some were having second thoughts. Others were relieved. A few were already calculating how to use this new arrangement to their advantage, but on the edge of civilized space, 6 black warships were jumping through hyperspace toward another crisis. The Hunter fleet didn't care about political calculations or diplomatic maneuvering. They cared about getting to that mining colony before anyone else died on the bridge of the Crimson Talon. Hannah looked at the tactical display showing their approach vector. "We're pushing the engines hard. Young Sue says we might burn out the pursuit drives. We'll worry about repairs after we save the miners," Day One replied. "You know, the council is going to second-guess everything we do now. We're going to have observers and critics and politicians looking over our shoulders.